I'm going to take a slightly different look at this and talk about how we might modernize strategic workforce planning to make it work for the employees themselves. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail over the next few minutes or so. As you know, strategic workforce planning looks at putting the right people in the right jobs at the right time, hopefully at the right cost as well. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the kind of framework that we see on this page. It's been used for many years. To start with, looking at the drivers influencing our strategic workforce plan. Then we get into scenario forecasts and our demand forecast. Towards the bottom, we look at workforce analysis, and I've circled that because I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. That then gets us into our supply forecast. And then ultimately, the goal is to be able to match these two to better understand where the gaps in the workforce might be in the coming years, and then go through the talent interventions on the right-hand side to then be able to close those kinds of gaps. It's a very top-down process. To a certain point, it does not involve the employee themselves as part of this. And you could argue that the data itself is fairly limited. Demographic data like age and tenure, employment data like role and job grade. But there's very little that tells us that the employees feel that they are part of this process. And so I think we can start to modernize this for more organizations that are being asked to take on more social responsibility or better understand employee engagement. How can we make workforce planning work for the employees? So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about this idea of employee passions. And if you think about workforce planning since the 1970s, traditional workforce planning has talked about capacity, matching supply and demand the way you saw on the previous page. More recently and today, we're talking about capability-based planning, so skills. Being able to capture skills in a database, align those skills with job roles, forecast those skills. It is certainly challenging. AI will help us, I think, with much of this, but it's still a bit of a struggle for the organization. Nonetheless, those first two activities are still very much top-down. What I'm curious about as part of this framework is this idea about including employee passions. So let me take you through what's on the right-hand side in a little bit more detail. All of you study employee engagement, whether that's rational engagement or in this case, emotional engagement, which is really the employee's sense that their work is valuable. They find value in it themselves. Their organization finds value. They're aligned with the company and the culture and its own values. I'd say that passions contribute to that. Passions give us a sense that our work is worthwhile, that there are growth opportunities for us within this company that we would love to be able to take advantage of. Maybe it's working more closely with a team. Maybe it's following a certain skill set or project. But the passions are the things that really drive us forward, and they absolutely influence our levels of employee engagement. Now, research has also shown that emotional engagement drives higher levels of work effort. If we're excited about our work, we are more likely to work harder at it. And in turn, if all of us as an employee base are working harder, that will drive organizational productivity and value creation, which is a very reasonable goal of workforce planning. So if we can find a way to harness and better understand employee passions, what are we excited about? That will drive emotional engagement, which drives productivity. So why would we not want to include that as part of the next generation of workforce planning? So if that's a little bit on the why, the next page then goes into the how. And I'll be completely honest, this is a new concept to me. I'm still developing my own ideas about it. But in terms of what you could do differently as part of a workforce planning process, first of all, a couple of caveats. This is not about making employees simply happy or making them smile more, for example. It's not about allowing them to work on fun things independent of the kind of value the company creates. We have to merge those two things. I should be working on things that are passionate to me, but that also drive value for my organization. With respect to workforce planning, starting small with workers in critical job roles, which is traditionally a focus of workforce planning, employees that have very specialized skill sets, high performers, high potentials. Start small, focus on a particular segment of the workforce. Secondly, ask the kinds of questions you see here on the page to better understand what are your passions? What are you excited about? What roles would you like to move into in the future? If you had more time, where would you spend that time? But do so in the context of what value would it create for the organization? Not just about you maximizing your own self-worth, but are we creating value for the organization? We can then start to use that data on an aggregate basis to better understand either capability or engagement gaps within certain roles, or on an individual basis to go back to employees and say, we want to match you to future roles, but we're going to do so also based, taking into account the passions that you've shared with us as well. So, early stage idea, would love to get feedback on this. Thank you very much, but hopefully we can make workforce planning work for the employees themselves.